My name is Gernot Starke. I'm working as an InnoQ fellow, software architect. I'm involved in customer projects, and I'm highly involved in this ARC42 architectural open source stuff. Probably many of you will know. Yeah, that's what I'm doing for a day job. I had good fun. The room was packed, actually. I was impressed. I had not thought that so many people would be interested in this psychology topics, so it was good fun. Our brain actually has evolved over a few million years, and during evolution it was not optimized for software development, but for reproduction and survival. And so it functions a bit differently than we probably think it would do. And that was the keynote about this brain quirks, about this sometimes strange behavior. One of the biases that we don't see everything that's happening around us because input is filtered by a certain part of the brain called thalamus. And the thalamus just filters out a few of the inputs. When we walk over the street, we probably don't recognize certain things, but we focus on others. And that's a nice thing. There are famous experiments. This famous gorilla experiment where people showed a video of basketball players and a gorilla is crossing the game, and people don't recognize the gorilla, but focus on the players instead. And that's a well-known brain quirk, a cognitive bias, limited perception. And I consider that very interesting. We feel that every day when we talk to others, when we are in working projects. One, for me, very interesting thing is the so-called confirmation bias, that we tend to be more interested and we read more intense things we already believe are true. So it's very difficult in teams to convince people of other options when they already have a strong opinion on things, even if that strong opinion is completely wrong or bad in the current situation, because we are biased. And that's a brain quirk. During evolution, it was very positive to be biased and not to experiment with new fruits, for example, because the new fruit might be poisonous. So people have died that experimented too much. So we stick to staying on the road we have already been onto. There is a very famous saying in projects, we have done it that way since years, so we continue doing it that way. And this is actually hindering us from innovation, from trying out new stuff. And as architects, we have to encourage innovation in teams. So we have to be proactive in convincing developers and other colleagues to try out new ways of working, to try out new technologies, and to experiment. And then to evaluate the results. So not be overly optimistic, but to be aware of these biases in our brain and try to be as objective as possible. Being aware of the bias first. So if you know the problem, then you can work on the problem. That's obvious. So if we know about these biases, in software development, teams or people should know that we have biases in our heads. So if we are conscious, we can work on them. That's one thing. Another thing is that this confirmation bias can be trained. So if an architect, for example, makes the team focus on a different way of working or makes the team focus on a different quality requirement, then these topics become easier, become simpler to handle. Because our brain is primed, our brain is trained to also watch out for these aspects. There is one well-known methodology called domain-driven design. that is actually a combination of requirements engineering and architecture. But one thing domain-driven design perfectly does is it primes development teams for the importance of the business. And as geeks, as nerds, people are often looking just for the technology. And now with domain-driven design, they are primed to also look for the business aspects of problems, which is one thing to overcome this, one of the biases. And a second option to overcome a bias is the called quality-driven architecture. That means focusing on quality requirements, explicitly discussing those, and then the brain is primed. If you encounter, for example, a performance thing in your code, your brain will recognize it. I suggest that developers and architects in teams recognize the importance of neuroscience and psychology. So, briefly said, the soft skill aspects of software architecture. So architecture is not just about technology, it's also about people. And we have to recognize that. So invest a little of your education time, of your self-growing time into soft skills, communication, become aware, read a bit about the brain, and that will make things a lot better.